Even though so much of My Hero is very wholesome or even inspiring for people, there are quite a few bleak moments that show up too. The last arc especially shows us the real brutality of war and villainy in a society with abilities. In fact, there's a lot more death than most people might realize. So why not go through everyone who's lost their life? But instead of sorting the deceased by name or importance, we'll be going in terms of when it happened. That way, it's also easier to see just how much of a toll the hero-villain wars had on the world. Important deaths prior to the series. There's one hero who tried her best to make the right decision, but in doing so started a snowball effect of chaos. That's right, All Might's mentor, Nana Shimura. Her importance goes without saying, considering she's linked to both Izuku and Shigaraki. For Deku, she's a vestige that can help him to understand his quirk factor, seeing as All Might is the last user but didn't know some past secrets. But because she's Shigaraki's grandmother, someone who could have been there to guide him or protect him from his father, she also functions as a weakness for our MC. Even though it wasn't her intention, deciding to give her son up for adoption while being a hero that was killed against All for One influenced his hatred of heroes. Also, there's no denying that Nana's death greatly influenced All Might's actions, trying to be the ultimate hero, but also holding regret and a soft spot for Tomura as her relative. It also pushed him to be more reckless and willing to die to avenge her death. Next, we have Kota's parents, who went by the hero team name Waterhose. Sure, they're not as significant as Nana, but they caused repercussions in the story anyway. If not for their deaths, Kota wouldn't be so disdainful towards heroes, and wouldn't be somewhere alone where Deku would have to come save him. Also, Deku wouldn't have been as beat up and might have been able to stop Bakugo's kidnapping without needing to risk confronting All for One. Another meaningful death is that of Shirakumo Oboro. Not only is he introduced to us as the first Nomu in the story, but one that is independent and more eloquent than the others. Let's not forget that he's also used as a guardian for Shigaraki specifically, to keep him on the correct path. Had Shirakumo not died, Aizawa and present Mike's lives might have changed drastically. But thanks to their connection to him, he also allows them to gain information on the villains and to use his warp to help during the big wars. If not for him, Deku might not have defeated All for One's second body. Lastly, we have Eri's father, who was accidentally erased by her quirk. If not for his death, she wouldn't have been abandoned by her mother and left with the Shiaya Sakai. Her grandfather was kind enough, but once Chisake got involved, her life took a turn for the worst. Now that we've established everyone's past traumas, let's get into what happened in each arc to get characters killed. USJ arc. During the very first season, we're introduced to a non-verbal creature called a Nomu. After it has an epic battle against All Might, it gets sent flying like Team Rocket and eventually is recovered by authorities. That Nomu is revealed to be a villain who had died and was brought back to life and given quirks, with those same quirks likely causing his less than human, mindless state of obedience. This was a truly shocking reveal, but also a great foreshadowing moment for Kurogiri. Stain arc. Many villains in the series are easy to relate to, but it's kind of hard to feel sympathy for Stain when he killed 17 heroes. At least they were off screen and unnamed, and in that same arc, Endeavor ends up having to burn an eyeless Nomu to death to keep it from regenerating. Likewise, after Stain comes to appreciate Deku and his resemblance to All Might's mentality, he doesn't hesitate to kill the flying Nomu, and he does it with broken ribs. On a related note, we find out that Stain's parents were killed. Once his history and capture are all over the news. And in another report, Toga's responsible for some unknown person's death, which leaves her on the run and seeking allies. Hideout Raid arc. While trying to recover Bakugo from the League of Villains, a slew of Nomu are unleashed on the heroes present. Because of that, Edgeshot and Endeavor end up killing 7 of them. Later on, Nana Shimura's husband and his likely death by All for One's hands is mentioned. It's not confirmed it was by him, but it feels inevitable that the supervillain had some involvement, even if not directly. Provisional License Exam arc. In the middle of Shigaraki seeking new members for the League, the members go out to recruit villains. Dabi, on the other hand, has a very strict criteria and decides to straight up cook 6 hopeful villains for being unworthy of joining. Shiai Hasakai arc. One villain that Dabi should have cremated was Overhaul. If not for him, Magni wouldn't have been bursted and killed, and neither would have that unnamed member of Overhaul's group, who got decayed by Shigaraki when he shielded Chisaki. Unlike the League of Villains, Overhaul doesn't care much for his allies and uses them more like tools. That's made even more clear when Overhaul kills his own man for losing track of Eri and causing suspicion for the organization. Keep in mind that his quirk allows him to repair any injury, and he could have revived that guy if he wanted to. Instead, he chooses to control the group with fear. He does kill other members by merging with them to get stronger, but Eri's quirk reverses that, so they don't really count. But the biggest loss of this arc is when Night Eye dies from injuries after facing Overhaul. If not for his foresight quirk, maybe he would have tried to fight Fate more and spent less time worrying about All Might's death. Later on, when Overhaul is finally captured, the hero escorting him to prison is unfortunately taken out. Snatch, who actually could counter Shigaraki's decay pretty well, was a bad matchup for Dabi and his sadistic ways. I'm sure it didn't help that he was trapped inside Mr. Compress's marble afterwards. Pro Hero Arc. The Pro Hero arc is more about how the heroes do against Nomu threats and giving the villains a means to test them out. With that in mind, some weaker Nomus get taken down by support heroes and Hawks, but the big gun, Hood, a Nomu that can speak and even taunt Endeavor, ends up getting practically turned to ashes when he pushes the new number 2 hero to go plus ultra. It's hard to see this as proper hero work, knowing these creatures are all unlucky people who were modified and forced to become pawns. Meta Army Arc. Though not as memorable as the others, Destro took his own life in the past and influenced Re-Destro's decision to follow in his footsteps. Even Destro didn't know that he had left a young son behind. Along that vein, Re-Destro named his group the Meta Liberation Army and insisted that they needed to crush the League of Villains in order to be respected. As you can imagine, Shigaraki's gang wasn't into that and fought back like they never did before, killing many of Re-Destro's followers. In another flashback, we find out twice his parents were also killed and that he had been through a series of really unlucky events, one after the other, which evidently led to his villain behavior. Oh, and some more Meta Liberation members get killed, and some more Liberation people after that, but this time by Gigantomachia, who throws them into the air. If you're feeling generous, you can imagine that some of them maybe survived the fall. And seeing as this is an arc filled with villain flashbacks, we also get one for Tenko Shimura, before he became Tomura Shigaraki. Without meaning to, Tenko kills the family dog named Moan, his sister, his grandparents, and his mother. His father was really not an accident though. He meant that from the depths of his soul. After all that trauma, he's picked up by the origin of evil himself, aka All for One, and encouraged to fight back. Shigaraki does just that by killing some criminals that had beaten and harassed him. That's also when he started wearing his family members' hands on his body. As for this next arc, well, that's where things really go off the rails when it comes to characters dying, because this is the Paranormal Liberation War arc. We start this bloody battle off slowly, with the bunny hero Mirko killing some Nomu and a small one named Johnny. She did this because they were blocking her path to Shigaraki, who was her real target. After that, more Nomu get killed by her and Endeavor, who's finally caught up to her crazy speed and needs to support her. Elsewhere, with things wrapping up to at least a 9, Hawks realizes the danger Twice presents now that he can confidently use his quirk and decides to end him. To make matters worse, Twice gets stabbed in the back after being figuratively stabbed in the back by Hawks that he was really getting along with. If you consider that he already felt responsible for Magni's death when he trusted Overhaul, he's been buried in guilt. He really had such a miserable existence. Back at the lab where Shigaraki's unconscious, the female Nomu gets taken out by Endeavor, but so does Exilus when Shigaraki gets brought back to life by a small spark. There really was no need to rub it in by stealing the Red Gape. But now that he's awake and active, Shigaraki's ready to launch his assault on the heroes. His first kill is the reliable shield hero Crust, who gets decayed because he helps Aizawa to escape safely on Ryukyu's body. All the remaining Nomus are just casualties of Shigaraki's decay as well, having no way to flee the spread of it. And once it reaches outside the underground, 5 heroes who didn't have a flying quirk are disintegrated. The League members join in on the murder too. All on her own, Toga kills 7 heroes by taking Eel Boy's likeness on, since he was already killed by a twice double. But she also might have murdered an old lady so that she could get Uraraka's attention and chat with her in private. After helping the students escape Gigantomachia's devastating rampage, Majestic loses his life. But that's nothing compared to the 16 people killed by Dabi off screen, and all the ones that Gigantomachia is charging through the cities to reach his new master's location. After a heart-filled conversation with Yaoyorozu, Midnight's still recovering from being attacked by Compress when a group from the Paranormal Liberation Front finds her. We weren't told right away, but she didn't make it. After all that frantic fighting, we get a flashback to the League versus the Creature Rejection Clan. To no one's surprise, the Rejection Clan got taken out by them. But back in the present arc, 2 Nomus are killed, one by Master Driller. But that hero is not lucky enough to survive and gets chomped on by another Nomu who came for him next. Some hero public safety members are killed by the Paranormal Liberation Front to cause even more unrest and confusion for society. After that is when we get the hero death toll revealed to us. At least those they know of. One of them stands out, seeing as he was almost killed by Stain in the past already. That's right, no one's around this time to save Native. But then we're given a picture of at least another dozen heroes, some familiar, some not, who also died from the massive conflict. With the war over, things should calm down now, right? Nope. All for One takes over Shigaraki's unconscious body to free his real one in Tartarus. And to do that, it requires some violence. But let's be real. Even if it didn't, All for One would have killed some people anyway. The first line of defense, brothers Biarios and Gygas, are killed by All for One and Nomu's attacks. Afterwards, at least a dozen guards are massacred by the convicts or All for One using Shigaraki's body. Then some inmates get killed by Moonfish, who just does it for fun. The only reason there aren't more casualties is because some criminals make an effort to change their ways. Dark Hero Arc. Evidently, after all that violence and death, Deku feels like he's a big cause of the state of things. So he goes off like a vigilante. During that time, he comes across a former hero named Lady Nagan. As it happens, she was given marks to kill in secret, commissioned by the Hero Public Safety, for a total of 8 people. This weighed on her, so her last target was the president themselves, when she was tired of their orders. We also get a sense of how productive Stain's been by finding out that he has 23 past victims. That doesn't include a Tartarus inmate that he took down when the person tried to escape. Star and Stripe Arc. Sadly, we aren't given much time with the #1 hero of the United States before she reaches an untimely death, and this was made possible in part because of the Nomu that blew itself up for Shigaraki. Or should I say, All for One? Anyhow, not long after that, Star and Stripe gets decayed by Shigaraki despite trying to stop it with New Order. On the positive side, Shigaraki's forced to leave and transfers the quirks to Kashiko Kashi, a villain that just happened to be around after escaping prison. And neither does the woman there with him when Shigaraki wants to take her quirk or pass it on. Heading into the final arc, we come to a head with all that's been built up until this point. Any unresolved feelings or goals are reached or given up for good, and there's no lack of emotional moments to match. This is the final war arc after all. With one of the highest kill counts of the series, we get another flashback to Toya, prior to becoming the Dabi that we know. He ends up killing Mr. Sunny and 13 children when he burned down the building that he was in. Keep in mind, he was brought there by All for One, who made sure to collect him before Endeavor could. Trying to face off with Shigaraki when Deku's not there like he's meant to be, Bakugo dies. No, really, he actually died. After his arm is crushed and he pushes himself beyond his limits, his heart explodes. Thankfully, there are plenty of selfless heroes around to lend a hand, so Edgeshot attempts to manually repair it. Despite that choice, it was going to be a 2-for-1 death special, if not for Bakugo's quirk and how much he's worked on it. A literal sweat drop ends up being the key to bringing him back. Also, how is Edgeshot still alive when he used most of his body to suture him? Anyway, facing off against a monstrous and unhinged version of Dabi, Endeavor's sidekicks, Kido and Onima, are burnt like toast, left for too long. But they got that way trying to help Shoto when Dabi used his ultimate move named Phosphoron. The reason it's unclear if he's dead is because we haven't seen him or heard about him since the war ended. Taking a step back though, Gigantomachia was becoming upset because of All for One abandoning him. Despite coming back with a new body, He could tell it was him by smell. This loyalty was highly influenced by the dog-like quirk put into him. So when he decided to join the hero's side, reeling from betrayal, All For One attacked him, cutting a chunk out of his body. Honestly, considering what was done to him, as another Nomu-esque person, maybe it's best if he doesn't return. Another shocker is whether Toga's going to make it or not. After Himiko had a major battle against Uraraka and Tsuyu, she ended up transferring her blood to Ochako to keep her alive because they'd finally come to understand each other. By the way, she said that she gave Ochako all her blood. Not many people can survive that, but maybe help came through and brought her for treatment? Stain, however, does the right thing in the end. Working alongside the hero he holds the most respect for. All Might survives thanks to his help, but has to watch as the criminal dies by the hands of All For One. Speaking of him, it's also confirmed at this point that in a flashback, Yoichi was in fact killed by his older twin brother All For One. The way the criminal mastermind spoke of him, it made it seem like it was from a frail body or an accident. Sadly, when he ran away from All For One, he was killed as he passed on his quirk to the next holder. Following this is All For One himself. Yes, the Demon Lord is finally gone for good. After being reversed with a modified version of Eri's quirk with no way to stop it, he becomes a fetus and disappears. Bakugo, who returns from death, is also involved, trying to keep him away from the second body so he can't combine them. All the stolen quirks are released as well, but he can't be returned to the original users that way. This also includes Hawks' quirk, sadly. Okay, I lied. There's still the secondary body, aka his vessel Shigaraki. After having been pushed away and eliminated from All For One's body as a vestige, Shigaraki returned thanks to Nana. He ends up playing a part alongside the past holders to get rid of any speck of All For One left. Before disappearing completely, Shigaraki makes peace with Deku, wishing him luck. At the same time, this connects to the end of One For All and the vestiges that had lived within him. And that might be the saddest death of all. And that is nearly every death in My Hero. Maybe I missed a few, but that's pretty much all of them. Let me know what you think about these in the comments, guys. And if you liked the video, please give it a like. And if you want to see more My Hero content like this, please subscribe. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.